Chief, I wanted to start by asking, just try to get a general sense of the timeline in the mission investigation. You've always referenced earlier this year. When did this stop occur, and when did some of these allegations sort of come to light or come to the department's attention?
So the exact date of the complaint investigation that resulted in my assignment of the gang enforcement detail, taking them out of the field and assigning a number of them to home and so forth, began, I believe, in the last part of December. And then the investigation took place where, through the months that followed that, was an effort to identify who these unidentified officers were. And then once we felt we had them identified, through the investigation was then to determine whether or not this incident was isolated, or that there was evidence that there was other instances in which the officers had engaged in similar conduct. Then with that, also that went to if these officers worked with other individuals, and whether, again, the practice of or the instances of undocumented stops occurred. Evidence was gathered over the course of the months that have followed, including an instance where we believe items that were not returned to motorists or to people who were stopped, and that resulted in a search warrant being authored, which is under seal at this moment, but the search warrant being authored to determine whether or not the item could be recovered.
An item from that one particular stop or other?
From stops.
Okay. The second question is, how many officers to this point have been relieved of duty?
Well, formally, the relief from duty occurs once the person is directed to a Board of Rights. But being administratively relieved of their responsibilities as a gang officers, the entire unit, in addition to the sergeants and the lieutenant, have been reassigned from their responsibilities as overseeing that gang unit. In addition to that, we've identified and are identifying additional personnel that will properly trained, will be then resourced within that gang unit to ensure their efforts, important critical work, continues in the mission area.
I wanted to follow up on some of the points that Commissioner Camacho made there. How confident, or I guess, are you in the sense that some of these allegations haven't spread to other units, or some of these tactics that were employed by this particular GED unit wasn't used elsewhere?
Yeah, well, that is one of our concerns, is understanding whether or not that's actually occurring. And that's why when the investigation started with an instance of an officer or a complainant saying that they had been stopped and they felt wrongly and without just cause, and their vehicle searched, again, without justification, we didn't investigate just that. Once we found evidence to support that did occur, then the next question was, has this occurred by these officers involving other people? Involving other motorists or pedestrians. And when we found that there was evidence that it had, we then asked the next question, which was, did these officers work solely with just themselves, or did they work with other officers within the unit? And that's the stage that we're at in this investigation now. Whether or not these officers' actions are being engaged in by other officers across the organization, I have no evidence that there is. But at the same time, as a prophylactic measure, we are calling in gang units throughout the city into a expectations meeting, and a meeting that will discuss what their responsibilities are, and that not just in regards to stops, but documentation, what body-worn video requirements are. This is well established, but we have young officers that have not carried body-worns, say, for 10 years. But nonetheless, I believe it's understood across the organization. But just to ensure that should there be any sense that this is a practice that is somehow authorized or that allowable or will be viewed as a immaterial matter, nothing could be farther from the truth. I will close those meetings out by my personal attendance. I've made some very public remarks and very strong, I think, strong remarks about where I stand on this issue and where this organization stands. There is absolutely no room for people not to conduct themselves in a way that we require, and for them to purposely not document detentions or stops of individuals. There is absolutely no tolerance for that, and I think our actions will demonstrate that, both in the accountability loop as well as the actions that we're taking with those that I have no evidence that they've done anything wrong. I believe in the vast majority of the men and women in this department. I think that they go out every day and they do outstanding work. But I also believed in that unit in the same way. And unfortunately, the facts have not allowed me to continue that belief. And so as a chief, it's my responsibility to ensure that I understand the embarrassment, the frustration that these individuals apparently has created with me. Is I need to also ensure, are there any chance that such an opportunity is occurring someplace else? And if it is, we're going to pursue that. The truth will take us where this takes us.
Two last quick things. What do you say in response to some of the comments from the public at the meeting, suggesting that some of this behavior is sort of inherent to these specialized units? I mean, there was a mention of the field interview cards, controversy surrounding Metro. Obviously, Rampart.
Sure. So we can go back, and when we look at specialized units and all work conditions, I recognize that these instances where we've seen these failures that have occurred in these work units, one of the critical aspects of it is understanding what are the dynamics in that work unit. What's the supervision? What's the leadership? What are the informal and formal practices that stress reverence for the law and the fact that we will respect people and that we will follow the rules and regulations of an organization. And as an organization, we have seen failures in leadership. We've seen failures in leadership at times amongst peers, amongst first and second line supervision, and sometimes regrettably even higher than that. But I will also say that those are rare episodes, in my view. To the vast majority, we have more than 300 personnel that work gang units across this entire city. They work a very dangerous job, one that puts their lives in constant threat of individuals who are violent and will resort to violence. With that said, they work within environments and communities that I believe they make a difference in providing for the safety. And I think they do it in a very good and a very professional way. And I think they do it by following the rules and recognizing that those rules are to protect them as much as they are the community. And I'm proud of their work. This causes me such concern because it is so 180 degrees away from what we expect and what we see. So now we'll take this investigation to determine and now prove that the operations in other parts of the units across the city, specialized units or otherwise, are following the rules.
Last question: is there anything about this incident or these series of incidents that exposes any sort of cracks in the system of oversight in the department, namely around the issue of body camera activation?
I think the challenge that this incident shows is that an officer is given the authority, the responsibilities to conduct proactive patrols. And we expect that they're going to document and record those actions every day without having a camera on them 24/7, 365, filming their every action. We expect them, and I think it's a fair expectation. These are professional men and women who we give great responsibilities and also great authority. And I think that what this demonstrates is that in this instance, that the trust that we gave them, they broke. And secondly, while we have oversights and practices to try to discover and ensure adherence to our standards, no system is perfect. We will look to other agencies, as was suggested. How are they governing? How are they inspecting? How are they watching this material? But in reality, I'm not aware of any other system that is foolproof. But I also know that we learn from every day of our work, and that this failure, there's an opportunity for us to see what else can we do to ensure that this type of failure does not reoccur.
So, quick piggyback off of that, you mentioned the SC study and the use of AI and machine learning. Does this maybe open the door for the department itself using AI to?
The concern I have with, let me just say, opening a door for the use of AI. I think AI, artificial intelligence, is a very scary term to many people because they think it's somehow autonomous and that it's going to take its own path. And so I'm mindful of the fact of what's commonly referred to as what can analytics, what can auditing, what can inspections, and what can systems do to help show anomalies. And I'm always interested in understanding how that can happen. I will say that part of our modernization of our record management system and our technology is to automate what is currently a paper or independent system. For instance, when you conduct a stop, an officer conducts a stop of someone in the field, they actually type in the date, time, location, and the nature and actions within that stop. Separately, they go to a whole nother system to articulate the REPA data as far as the nature of the stop and all the actions taken. And then separately from that, they have a body-worn video log. And those three systems don't talk with one another. And then in addition to that, you have a CAD, computer-aided dispatch, that has an initial incident that the officer does, and the officer enters information into that system. So these disparate systems, when you have millions of cycles, will inevitably have errors that are natural, but in this instance, a weakness is that they are not cross-referencing. The only way you can cross-reference all these systems is to manually go into each one of them. And that's what our update, working with Deputy Chief McMahon and ITB, is to fix, is what we want to address that so that, and by the way, the officers do as well, because instead of entering information once and populating all those needed systems, right now we're entering them separate times over and over and over again. And that is wasting a huge amount of officer time. All right, thank you guys.